John O'Keefe was a Boston police officer who passed away in January of 2022 in Canton, Massachusetts. Courtney and I were invited to a dinner with Karen Reed, who was accused of murder in that case. And there were some who are texting now, some like maybe our next guest, who were upset that we went to that dinner and posted a photo. And so my obligation as a broadcaster is to give any and all who are upset the opportunity to respond. And so John Jackson is here. John, how are you?
Appreciate it. Good morning.
Thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
And you are a longtime friend of John's, college buddies. College buddies.
Together, yeah.
And you are here to represent a group of friends and others who kind of want the other side of the story to be told. Am I right about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's not that we were really upset about you guys going to do it. It is what it is. I mean, you do what you have to do, but just like this opportunity, really, to get out and say the other side, because we feel, like I said, I don't represent the O'Keefe family. I know them. I love them. They're fantastic. But I'm more like the lifelong friends of Johnny. Kind of got together and said, let's put some of these, some of these rumors to rest. Some of the untruths out there to rest, and just talk about him, get him back to the front and center of this.
Yeah.
If I could, and I think that's why Greg and I took the opportunity to sit down with her as well, because there was so much out there. And whether it's social media or watching the live stream during the trial, it has become a circus.
Wild.
And I can't imagine being a friend of his and watching this all unfold.
Sure.
But for Greg and I, we weren't there. So for me, I wanted to sit down with somebody and ask the questions that were on my mind. And when the opportunity presented itself, and to sit down with her and me be able to say, I've heard this, I've heard this, I've heard this, and have somebody give me something, I thought that was important. And so that's why I'm so happy that you're here, too, because it is important to get both sides. But we've been very forthcoming in the fact that we both believe that John O'Keefe deserves justice. And if she did not do it, that's important, too.
Of course. I mean, we obviously have our side.
Right.
We feel a certain way about it. But, as far as...
But what is that way? Because it's important for you. You're here. So you have determined that she did it.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
Okay.
Definitely. So let's talk a little bit first. Let me talk about him, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Let me just start with Johnny. Let me talk about Johnny. Johnny was a fantastic guy, right? So, like I said, lifelong friends got together and said, during the first trial, we kind of just sat back and we all kind of agreed, let's not be the reason anything goes wrong here. We know the truth's on our side. The evidence is there. Let's let it play out. And we did. And we sat back. What we underestimated was the outside noise in the social media, sort of groundswell, if you will, that took off, and just the narrative got away from everybody. And of course, we watched the trial, and we know what we saw in the trial. Now we talk about it later if you want, obviously. Yeah. But all that stuff aside, the thing that's getting sort of pushed to the background is Johnny. And so as one of his friends, we want to make sure that his memory, everybody who thinks about this trial thinks about him first, right? Put his thought in your mind first, because that's ultimately the real victim here, the ultimate victim here. No matter what you believe in this case, he's the guy, and you said it yourself, justice for Johnny. But, I mean, he was such a tremendous guy. And I'll tell you a little bit. So we went to Northeastern together, right, in those years. We AF all the time, Hillman, right? So all the crazy shows. It's just like so funny guy. We commute together. We didn't live there. We commuted. So, he had this terrible car back in the day. I can't even say the word he called it. But, he had this terrible car, and we'd drive in, and there was a song, Gallows Pole. You just played it all the time. So, Gallows Pole, right?
Yeah.
And he was pretty straight-laced, great sense of humor, but he was, pretty put together. And every time the song came on, he'd roll the windows up so he could belt it out as loud as he could, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And just really let it go. And then as soon as the song's over, roll the windows down, but every morning with you guys,
had to listen
all the time. But I mean, just walk for change and all that stuff. We saw you guys many times.
I would include myself in this. That I don't think there are a lot of guys who would do what he did when it came to adopting his niece and nephew.
Yeah. Yeah. So
And so sounded like, and my interest in this is that, first of all, my interest, like everybody, like you, I wasn't there.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened.
Yeah.
You
yeah.
you don't know what happened.
No. Well, I mean, right. It's in terms of like eyewitnesses and stuff like. There's nobody, right? Of course.
Well, well, explain to me if you do know what happened.
Sure.
How do you know what happened?
So let's start back. Let's start back with, again, being close with the family, right? So the family and friends, we all know him and his personality and who he was, and he was not like an intensely like violent guy or anything. He was pretty laid back, and like it wasn't like so to hear these stories about like fights and anger and resentment with other, we can get into calling Albert or anything you want, right? So all this stuff, it just wasn't his nature ever, at all. So to hear like, oh, he had a beef with this guy and that, like, it just wasn't his personality, first of all, right? Like, we can start at the base there. But then immediately after the situation happened, the family and the close friends all got kind of these vibes from her saying, like she just changed on a dime, like her person, the way she interacted with the family, and it kind of set them back because, you met her, obviously. I've never actually met her in person, just, but, she's engaging and likable, and some of the closer friends were like, they, just didn't expect it. But when it happened and she changed on a dime, and that was it. She cut the family off, cut the friends off, and that was it. So those are kind of like telegraphing as to, possible reasons why the family considered her right away.
I will say that she echoed your sentiment, though, that he was not an aggressive guy, that he was not somebody. She told us, because I made sure to ask the question. I saw the rumors that John may have brought to light maybe Colin Albert and some drug accusations before this all went down. And she said that never happened. People are trying to make it more dramatic.
Sure.
They're trying to add more flame to the fire.
Sure.
And so for me, if you believe so strongly that she did it, and just looking at the evidence, how could she have been there and hit him at the time that they say he died if she was already at his house?
Sure, you're talking about the Wi-Fi.
Yes, yeah.
Right. So,
well, because I'm just,
right.
That's just my mind when
Sure.
watching this.
Sure. So, I mean, we can get specifically into it, like in terms of like the car data and stuff like, So,
Yeah.
so the Lexus, her Lexus had text stream data on it, and which these ARCA guys did not even look at. They're experts in this text stream data. It's on their website saying this is what we do. It's the and they didn't bother looking at it.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't know what their questions, right? We can get into that too, but
Yeah.
we don't know what they were actually looking for, if they decided what they decided without looking for it. But that text stream data, if you follow the timeline there's about 5 or 6 minutes between the time, close to 5. I mean, it depends on if it's, 4:59 or whatever, right? So there's about 5 minutes there between when we believe the accident happened and when the Wi-Fi connected. Now, the Wi-Fi can connect outside the house. You can pull in the driveway and that Wi-Fi can connect. It doesn't have to be, I'm sitting in front of the router, you know what I mean? It just can, so, go ahead.
Let me just ask you this. You believe, and I'm assuming that the family and friends believe, that in the United States, I think 5%, maybe less, slightly less, of the murders are committed by women. And so your belief is that, and you were talking about how John is not the kind of person who would get into a fight. So you're making that character judgment about John, and rightly so, knowing him. Do you at all question that 5% of these murders are committed by women, and this is somebody who was a Bentley professor, worked at Fidelity, had not been in trouble previously, and just decided on that night?
Well, I wouldn't say just decide. I mean, you're talking about 5% of the population, but it's one person.
Yeah.
We're talking about one person, right? So
Yeah.
you can throw all those stats out and just think this one person had whatever happened that night, whether highly intoxicated, and I won't get into it, but highly intoxicated in that moment. Whatever happened in that moment, there was something, right?
Yeah.
that happened. So
I want to ask this question because I wasn't as vested as Greg and Courtney is. Does the family and you guys believe that it was something that was just everybody was kind of very drunk and it was an accident, or does they feel like there was a little bit of intent there?
Sure. So I can speak to that. I'll speak about me personally. All right? So yeah, good question, because at the moment it probably was an accident, right? Like in the moment, at that moment, like the act was intentional, right? What she did was intentional. She's intoxicated. It was, they probably arguing and fighting or whatever, and there was the act was probably accidental. But the problem that we have is that happened at 12:30-ish at night, right? And find them at 6 o'clock in the morning, right? So what happened in that time frame? All those, we know she called her parents at 1 o'clock in the morning. Who calls their parents at 1 o'clock in the morning? Because I just saw my boyfriend walk into the house of a party I dropped him at.
Maybe it was a butt dial.
Hey, maybe it was a butt dial.
There were a lot of butt dials.
There was a lot of butt dials. We can get into that too.
But do those bother you at all?
Oh, sure. Look, I'll tell you flat out now. Like, again, speaking of myself, we're not. The investigation wasn't perfect, right?
Okay.
To say the least.
Well, that's
right?
what I want to get into.
Yeah,
so the jury, it was a mistrial.
Yep.
And I don't know any other way to. I assume you think that the state did not do a good job prosecuting the case.
Well, we'll find out in terms of with those affidavits and stuff what actually happened with the jury. The actual numbers of the jury.
But it was a mistrial.
It was a mistrial, yeah. So
the jury was not able to come to a unanimous verdict. That's the way the justice system
of course.
works.
So yeah, in terms of do we think the prosecution didn't do a good job? I'll say it. Let me rephrase it and say it. All the evidence that needed to be in front of that jury was in front of that jury to convict. If they wanted it, it was there. Hopefully, it gets repackaged in the second trial and delivered a little bit differently. My opinion, right? So, because everything that was necessary to convict her was there.
If she is found not guilty in the next trial, do you think that you, in seeking justice for John, will want to find out what happened?
I mean, look. So you're asking almost two. You're asking almost two different questions. Like, so the family knows and the friends know what happened. Okay. So if it's not, I don't want to jump ahead, but if we're taking a hypothetical that she's not convicted in the next trial.
Well, I'm only taking it because she wasn't convicted in this one.
Of course, and there's depending on how this goes, there's going to be another trial, right? In terms of there's going to be another trial, but. Do we still know? We know. We know what happened.
But we do know what
is that fair in the
look? You're talking about fairness is different than being able to prove something in a court of law, right? So we can talk about fairness. Joni's not here. That's not fair to us, right? So that's the most important thing for us. But if she's not convicted the second time, I mean, what are we going to do? We'll say if there's a not guilty, right? If there's a not guilty, well, that's the end of that, right? I mean, that's how it is. She would have been found to have not guilty in the court of law, and our hands are tied then, right?
Yeah.
But
you bring up, like, what did she do though between the time she left the party and then the next morning when John's body was found? They do have record. Like, she called him 30 plus times.
He's 100 phone calls, sure.
But there are over 30 voicemails. So during that time, we do know what she was doing. Does that raise suspicion to you at all that she didn't know she didn't know where he was?
Well,
because if she was so drunk, I just don't know if you can have the wherewithal to be able to say, I'm going to premeditate it to look like I'm looking for him.
Okay, so we talk premeditation is a little bit different too. Right? You're talking about something different than actual. Like, so, for instance, her actions to us show that she knew she did something wrong, right? And in those critical hours between, say, 1 a.m. or 12:30 and 6 a.m., possibly could have saved his life if she made different decisions. That's my opinion, right? So when you talk about the murder 2 charge, the third prong of that charge is the intent charge, right? But the intent is not, did she premeditate it? Did she intend to do it? The intent is, did she intend to do an act, right? Like the act of doing it. The act is driving the car backwards 24 miles an hour, 60-something feet, and hitting Johnny. That's the act, right?
Yeah, I'm sorry. My premeditation topic was about the phone calls. Like, was she sitting at home after doing this, knowing she did it, and say, okay, I'm going to call him over 100 times, leave over 30 voicemails to make it look like I was worried and looking for him? That's what I'm talking about. But if you're that hammered, I don't think you have the capacity to be able to do that.
So, obviously, we don't know, right? Obviously, we don't.
Yeah.
And I will never speak to her. So, I'll never get a chance to ask her that question. But you have to think, whatever happened in that moment that caused her to act the way she did and drive the car in reverse at that speed, at that crazy speed, hit him and move and drive away, that is, if we called it the way you were talking earlier about, was it intentional or was it an accident? Whatever it was, she did the act. She drove it. She drove and then she left him. Still drunk, still hysterical. Those actions in there, people act differently, obviously, in the moments. So those actions for the next 30 plus whatever the voicemails were, I don't keep the numbers, right? But whatever that was, you can't say it was necessarily rational. Could have been intoxicated. It could have been hysterical. Could have been whatever that reason is. I mean, some of the voicemails alluded to him stepping out or whatever. Wasn't true, but in her mind it was, So, so she's acting as like I try not to talk about her too much, but like those voicemails indicate a sort of jealous rage, right? That's what it sort of feels like. And so that moment of the accident, it feels the same way, right, to us. That moment was probably an incident of jealous rage. To us would be, you would talk about 5% of women, like still domestic violence, right?
Yeah.
So she still did the act, left him and left, and then those voicemails and everything indicate her state of mind at the time, right? So do I think she was trying to cover her tracks? Not at that point, but maybe like 4:30 when, things start wearing off. We've all kind of been there a little bit. Things start wearing off and you start coming to the reality of, I may have done something. And, the phone call she made to Kerry Roberts and the other people.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, is there concern with the family and friends of John O'Keefe moving forward that based off the first trial and the way the evidence might have been presented or obtained, that there could be a chance that she gets off on the second one, and you guys view it as somebody did a horrific act and they're now walking free?
Yeah, that's a worst case scenario for us. But absolutely, that's 100% a fear of ours. Like you said, first trial, we think the evidence was in front of the jury. Like to see it repackaged and maybe delivered a little bit better. But other than that, a fear of ours is and obviously the jury pool. Everybody around here knows about this. Like
when it comes to something like this, which captured the public's attention, is it your opinion as a friend of John's that we should not interview Karen Reed if Karen Reed is available?
Listen, you do whatever you want. You do whatever you want. All we ask is fairness in it,
okay,
right?
and that's why you want to come in today.
You guys do whatever. Of course.
And your message, because it's important to me that we get that out, is that you don't want John O'Keefe and the kind of guy that he was to be lost in all of this.
Absolutely.
Okay.
That's literally the most important thing to us. The trial is I say to my kids all the time, the worst thing already happened. So if she's found not guilty a second time, the worst thing already happened.
Yeah.
He's not here. We've already experienced the worst part of it. The O'Keefe family has experienced the worst thing they could after losing, Kristen too.
Yeah.
Johnny's amazing sister. So, the worst thing happened. So it would be salt in the wounds,
right.
and we'd miss a little bit of justice on that. Yeah, well, absolutely. But, can't bring it back.
Yeah.
And that's what we want to keep going here.
Listen, I appreciate you coming in. And
Sound like you have more to ask.
Well, no, I didn't say it in the beginning, and I just want to say it now because it is important, and I am sorry. Like, I'm so sorry for your loss because looking at you now, like, you can tell the emotion that you still have, and everything we have heard from everybody, people have called the show, people we've met in person, but also Karen, is that he was a great guy. So I'm so sorry, and it's I hope that it is less of a circus for you the second time around.
Yeah, that's kind of what we're out here trying to do, is just, you get the other side out there. Love to come back and talk if there's more about it.
Yeah.
We'll keep things open, and we'll do this again if we need to.
All right.
So,
all right, John.
appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you very much for coming by.
All right, guys,
Thank
thank
you
you.
so much.
Appreciate it, man.
Curtis, you didn't ask him about Jacoby Brissett and Drake May.
Well, I didn't want to get to the most important part of the conversation too soon.
Put Drake May in. Just put him in.
Yes.
Just do it.
There we go.
Just do it,
I
right?
love it. Let's
What are we
go.
waiting for?
We like Brissett. He's great, but let's just do it.
I had
you
to
know?
hold Jackson back. He had like 16 questions he was ready to.
All right, John, thank you.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.